Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is rebuke, and this verb was recommended by the viewer Artem. We're so grateful for you sharing another suggestion. Now let's take a moment and review the main way that we use the verb rebuke. And its meaning is to express sharp disapproval or criticism of someone either because of their behavior or actions. As I looked for different examples, I noticed a few common patterns with this verb. It was really common to see this used in connection to certain leaders. Could be in government, could be in business. Again, sharply disapproving or criticizing someone else. So not just merely saying like, oh, I don't agree with that person, but they are so wrong because of this. Another context that we're likely to see this is in religion. So religious leaders might use this, or there might be discussion of a god or gods, depending upon the religion, sharply disapproving or criticizing certain actions or behaviors. For now, you should know that rebuke is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, we're going to drop the E on the end because we have a verb that ends in the pattern vowel consonant E. The progressive form is pronounced rebuking. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now our base verb, rebuke, ends in an unvoiced K sound. This means the ED ending is going to make a T sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable when I say it. The past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this. Rebuked, rebuked. Okay. Now there's one phrasal verb you might encounter, and that is to rebuke for. Again, the meaning is very similar. We're scolding or criticizing someone for their action, for their error, for some kind of wrongdoing. An example of this might be, will the UN rebuke the country for violating the treaty? So we're looking for this international organization to scold or hold another country responsible for their wrongdoing of violating a particular treaty. Now let's continue to practice with our verb of the day, and we'll practice in a couple different verb tenses. Today we'll review the past perfect and the simple future. Let's start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions. But what makes it different than just the simple past tense is that we really want to stress that this action occurred before a certain point in the past or before another action. You'll notice past perfect has two letter P's, and that can help you remember you will need two parts to make your verb. We'll be using a past form of have, which is had, and then we'll be using the participle form of our verb. This is going to be our pattern no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, we'll see subject, had, and then that participle form of the verb. Let's look at an example. The 45-page ruling had rebuked the executive branch for putting itself above Congress. Again, I always try and find current common ways our verbs are being used. I look for those real, authentic examples. And I saw sentences very similar to this because there is a lot going on politically here in the United States. Generally, we have three branches of government. We ask that they share power so one doesn't become too powerful. But there is definitely a power struggle going on at the moment. And so there are various issues being raised in courts. Rulings are being made, they're being appealed. And so I think this article in particular was using this had rebuked because it was kind of difficult following the order. So Here they were noting this particular one had criticized the president, that would be our executive branch, for putting itself above Congress. Now let's take a look at how we would form a negative past perfect sentence. To do this, again, we'll start with our subject, we'll use had not, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. Someone made a disparaging comment about his team member, and he hadn't rebuked the commenter. This sentence was part of a longer story about kind of a feud or disagreement amongst two people. And this is what started it. So first, we have someone saying something rather negative, and someone assumed another person would speak up on behalf to kind of defend the person, and they hadn't, and that is what led to their disagreement. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the past perfect. To do this, start with had, then we'll have our subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. Had leadership rebuked her for her offensive comments? Again, so many different examples come up in regards to politics and the leaders of certain parties upholding certain levels of respect for institutions and other individuals or groups of people. Saw lots and lots of examples as I read about this verb. Now let's talk a little bit about the simple future. Today we're going to focus on making sentences with will. That's just one of three ways we can really talk about the future. Will is most common as people make offers and promises, and they'll also use it with predictions. We might see it with plans, but it's a little less common. The nice thing about making sentences in the simple future with will is that our pattern is going to stay the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, we'll have subject, we'll have will, and then the base verb. No special endings here on the verb. An example of this. The study concluded that consumers will rebuke inauthentic brands. So here, this particular study is making a prediction of how people who purchase things, those would be consumers, will deal with brands as they speak out about certain social issues and other kind of hot button sort of topics. And this was their conclusion or their prediction. Consumers are going to criticize and ultimately not support brands who they feel are not being authentic. Now let's take a look at a negative sentence in the simple future. This one references the International Soccer Federation. FIFA won't rebuke host countries for their violation of human rights. Many people have made this sort of continued prediction based on past behaviors and how certain countries sort of remain should say maybe unable to be criticized by these particular organizations and their leaders. I think there's a fear of financial repercussions. Now let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, start with will, then we'll have our subject, then the base verb. Here's another. Will God rebuke us for not speaking up? Saw sentences very similar to this in a variety of sermons, so kind of pastors' speech, asking questions like this, kind of. So like the idea of when you meet your maker, will you sort of be criticized for maybe what you haven't done in certain situations? Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb rebuke. And the first word we'll discuss today is just the noun form of this word. The noun rebuke has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. As a noun, it refers to an expression of sharp disapproval or criticism. An example of this: the Chief Justice's comments were a rebuke to the President's comments on the impeachment of federal judges. So, here you might notice that article a or a there, that's one nice signal that this word is being used as a noun in a sentence. Now, another word you might encounter is the noun rebuker. That er suffix is always going to tell us a person or thing that, and then we can kind of connect back to the meaning of the verb. So someone who criticizes someone else. An example of this: the suffragist was known as both a teacher and rebuker. That word suffragist might be a little new for some people here. When it gets used in U.S. history, it's generally referring to the people who fought for women's right to vote. And this sentence was actually part of an obituary describing someone who had done a lot to fight for women's right to vote. Another word you might encounter is the adjective rebuking. So it's going to look like our progressive form of the verb, same spelling, same pronunciation, but when we use this word as an adjective, we're describing something that is expressing sharp disapproval or criticism. An example of this: the supervisor's constant rebuking comments have damaged the team's morale. Right? So people always feel down, like, we're always being criticized. Nothing we do is good enough. Related to that, we have an adverb. We're going to take our adjective, we're going to add that ly suffix, and this is going to describe something being done in a severe and disapproving manner. An example of this: his article's scope were rebukingly more modest than other scholars of that time. So, this sentence was describing someone who was intentionally trying to be shorter and more direct in their analysis or critique of a particular issue than others who were also writing on those same issues. And again, this person is describing that it was being done to sort of express disapproval. I think kind of the idea of like you're being elitist by being so wordy and making things more complex than what it needs to be. Again, I want to say a special thanks to Artem for suggesting today's verb, and I thank you all for watching. Have a great day.